I'm going to take my mask off. This is Tom Dermody, Mayor of City of LaPorte. With me today for this AMA Ask Me Anything is Dr. James Leonard from LaPorte Hospital. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Mayor. Glad to be back.
We are separate, and so we can both take our masks off. We're the only ones in each of our rooms. Before we get started with Ask Me Anything, and again, we've already got a big crowd online. Please message me any questions while we have Dr. Leonard here. A couple of reminders. The City of LaPorte has drive-through service now open. Residents can make payments, start and stop service, and set up payment plans, all from the comfort of their vehicle behind City Hall. So please take advantage of the new drive-through that were used with COVID dollars. The Santa Parade is coming up on Saturday, November 28th from 11 to 1. It will be a drive-through. Enter State Street from Jackson Street and drive down the street to admire the parade entries, then proceed to the train depot to drop off your letter for Santa. The market on Monroe has been moved to a virtual market from December 3rd through the 5th. Follow our City of LaPorte Facebook page for more information on that. Also, we will have the Cookie Walk coming up on December 12th. Tins will be available for purchase soon. For more information, follow the LaPorte Santa Parade Facebook page. So with that, all I'm going to say is we're really honored to have Dr. Leonard here. I know you have data, so I will not go through that right now. We want to take all your questions, but obviously numbers are on the rise for COVID, not only on a national basis, but in the City of LaPorte. And Doc, I'm going to turn it over to you and just let you go right through where are we at with LaPorte Hospital right now and what's happening.
Yeah, sounds good. Once again, thank you, Mayor, for the invite to be here and speak to this. Obviously, we're doing this again because we need to, because our numbers are skyrocketing and we need to take care of our communities. So, yeah, so I'll start out broadly and go from U.S. down to the state of Indiana and then further into our own county and abroad. And we'll talk about what's going on locally here, too. So now we're up to 11.2 million cases in the U.S. with over 246,000 deaths. In the state of Indiana, we have over 262,000 cases and just under 5,000 deaths. LaPorte County, we're up to 3,900 total cases. This is a 700-point increase since yesterday's report on the IN.gov website. 700 more cases reported since I looked this up yesterday morning, up to 3,900 cases now. 83 deaths. Our 7-day positivity rate in LaPorte County is up at 12.5%. That's the highest it's been. Yesterday was the highest it was. We're getting higher and higher every day, meaning among the pool of individuals that we're testing, more and more are coming back positive. So our numbers are on the rise. It's spreading throughout our community without doubt. Again, these are the highest numbers we've had to date, and they get higher every day. Our neighboring Porter County to the west, we got just about 7,000 cases and with an over 16% 7-day positivity rate, also the highest it's ever been. That hospital system, with its testing pool of inpatients and outpatients, 1 in 4 patients are testing is coming up positive for COVID. So these are incredible numbers. To our east, St. Joe County, just about 15,000 cases with 200 deaths. They have a 12% 7-day positivity rate, also on the rise. Lake County, 24,000 total cases, over 4,000 deaths, and a 16% 7-day positivity rate, also on the rise. When you think about our region, we have an EMS Region 1 that LaPorte County is a part of. That includes Lake County, LaPorte County, Porter County, Newton, and Jasper. That is a homeland security type of our region distribution. And within that region, we look at hospital resources, things like total number of ICU beds, vents, things like that. And then through that form, we get some more data reported out. So those numbers are showing that within our region, for ICU beds, we have 24% still available. 37% are occupied with COVID patients, and about 39% are occupied with non-COVID patients. As far as ventilators go, we have about 80% of our total supply still available. 7% are being used on COVID positive patients and 13% on non-COVID patients. So that's a broad look in and around. As far as in-house, I'd say about 1/3 of our census, 1/3 of our capacity is in dealing with the management of COVID patients, and that number climbs also. So we are getting tight. We are at times reaching our occupancy and our capacity. There's a lot of plans in place that the hospital has been executing to assure that we have the beds available and we have the resources available. We're still doing a good job both locally and when you think about the region, everyone is just barely able to keep up. I cannot stress enough, we can't keep going like this. Our positivity rate trajectory is going straight up. There's not a flattening of a curve. We can't even talk curve yet. We have to turn this thing into a curve and then bring it down. And the only way to do that is going to be like we talked about back in March and April, social distancing, essential travel only, wearing your masks, going only where you need to go, hand hygiene. All these things are incredibly important now more than ever. You know, when I think back on when we first had these conversations and there was so much unknown and so much fear about how we could potentially get inundated with cases and get to a point where we're unable to care for all of our patients. I remember how much the community here rallied around that and did everything they could. There was an immense amount of success in distancing, essential travel only, big show of support from the community in producing and supplying PPE like masks to our healthcare workers. It was an awesome sight and was very helpful. It worked. The issue is that what I'm looking at now is what can we do? What would be a great show of citizenship now is to follow these mandates that are in place. Wear the masks, distance yourself, essential travel only. If you do these things, that's a great show of support for our healthcare workers and for those, could be you, it could be your loved one, it could be a neighbor that could eventually end up in the hospital with a severe form of the infection. So it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's about protecting our neighbors and our loved ones. And it has to happen. If we don't get on this now, we are going to exceed our capacity. When I say we, I mean our entire region. I mean all of northern Indiana.
Doc, thank you. And again, what we did, and we put in restrictions last week to, number one, not overwhelm the healthcare system, but number two, to keep the economy going. We're getting a lot of messaging. Why do we want to shut down the economy? What we've done, the restrictions in place are trying to keep the economy going. We worked with businesses, business owners to say, we can't afford to drop again, which putting our head in the sand and ignoring this and saying, go do as you've done, only almost guarantees a shutdown like we had in April. So the question is, and please, just because I was a part of being the restrictions, don't hold back. Are those restrictions that can help happily, hopefully flattening the curve?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that these go hand in hand. If you want to keep business open, if you want to keep our economy strong, you've got to stay open. How do you stay open? With lower positivity rates. How do you do that? By being effective in the processes and procedures you have in your stores, in your restaurants, in those places of employment. Distance properly, disinfect, immense amount of hygiene, and insisting on masking. If you maintain those and enforce those restrictions and those precautions where you work and where you are, then you're not spreading. So again, I'm in support of both. I agree. We have to keep our economy going. We also have to keep our communities safe. And if we head higher with these numbers of positivity, I just imagine what's going to be coming down from the state and locally on what we have to do in order to save lives.
So, Doc, also with that, and again, I'm not sure how masks with retail businesses where it says no shirt, no shoes, no service, you know, why a mask is so different than wearing a shirt, wearing shoes, and it's unfortunately become political. And this shouldn't be political. It should absolutely be medical, wearing it. So the question is, from your perspective, masks work? And not only it seems more data is coming out that they work to protect other people, but more and more data is coming out that shows that it does protect ourselves from reducing the opportunity of receiving the virus.
Yes, that's right. You know, like you said, the latest research now is showing that by wearing a mask, you are benefiting no one else but yourself. I shouldn't say no one. I mean, it is those around you too. So yes, we always said wear the mask so you're not spreading droplet nuclei that contains the virus into others around you. Do it for the sake of others, always. Now it's showing that, there's studies that show even from 70% to 85% effective in protecting yourself from those droplets that I'm talking about that carry the virus that you can inhale through your nose or get into your mouth, and then it's in your system, and then you've got it. So you're not just doing it for others, you are truly doing it for yourself to keep that mask on.
If the virus is airborne, how does the mask stopping it come from Don Francis?
So the far majority of cases we'll call it inoculation. Inoculation is how you get infected. The far majority of cases or patients that become positive are getting it from the droplet form. That is the 6-foot piece that we talk about. It's carried through your breath, it's carried through your speech, it's carried through your coughing. And we've been able to prove that the far majority of these droplets, we call them droplet nuclei, the far majority of that can only go a distance of about 6 feet. Far majority is dropped down to the ground, to the surface, before it reaches the person that's 6 feet or greater away from you. That's the far majority of how this is spread. Some of it can travel much further, and extreme, microscopic size nuclei that it can be airborne and continue to travel on. But the concentration of that as spread per person is incredibly lower than the droplet piece that, like I say, travels at, typically about 3 feet. So you double it to 6. That's where the 6-foot thing comes from. That's where the far majority of spread is coming from. Droplet, not airborne.
Well, and again, we've got a number of people on, so hope you got a few minutes. COVID-19, can you get it twice?
That's a very good question. There are some case studies out there that are showing that it can happen. And that has everything to do with the individual's immune system and immune response to when they first got infected. There's a tremendous amount more research that's being done and case study reviews that are still being done to research this to determine how prevalent is it, how common or easy is it to get quote unquote reinfected. There's some, we'll call them false positive cases of this also that exist, because you can test positive for the virus up to 90 days after and when you're first infected by running the PCR tests. We haven't found that to be true. You got the infection, you get swabbed, and then you find out you're positive. Well, you can test positive by PCR up to 90 days later.
Dr. Leonard, I think we may have lost the mayor. I know that they were having internet issues earlier at City Hall. Maybe we'll hang out for a few minutes and I'll read some of the questions to you while we're waiting for him to log back in.
Okay, are we offline right now?
No, you and I are online. Mayor just dropped, but I assume Jess Bruder will be helping him get back on.
Sure, sounds good.
I'll run through some of these questions. Let me just get everything up. I'll start with saying I must ask you a question. Let's see here. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to ask the questions. Mayor was doing that. What is the survival rate?
I'm back here.
All right, good deal.
So sorry about that. A few technical difficulties with the internet. Doc, how are our numbers compared to when the pandemic first began? And I think you've stated we are overrun at this point compared.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways of looking at it. You can look at your positivity rate through counties, like I was saying, but more locally, we can get an even better idea. You can look at your number of admissions. I think an important piece here is to talk about, and the concern is around those people who get a severe form of the infection that need to be admitted to the hospital, and the worry that when that population is so strong that you can inundate and overwhelm your resources to care for all those people at the same time. So that reflects on hospital admissions. I would say that we currently are seeing within our region numbers like 600 to 700% increases in the amount of admitted patients that we're seeing now compared to the numbers we were seeing back like in the summer when it seemed like we were kind of steady as she goes. So again, 600 to 700% more admissions coming right now than we had in the past. So if that's an indicator of just how strong and how serious and how real this is getting, I'm telling you, it's for real.
So also, is there anything people can do to boost their immune system, especially as flu season approaches? I would assume a flu shot is very important. And you hear a lot about the vitamin C, vitamin D. Any thoughts there from a medical perspective?
Yep. So flu shots first. Great point. Get your flu vaccination. It's going to protect you for sure. You can get co-infected. Be simultaneously infected with the influenza virus and with COVID. And imagine your body's ability to fight both of those off at the same time. It'll be a heck of a lot harder and more severe form of infection you're likely going to get or can potentially get. So I strongly recommend getting a flu vaccination. Call your physician. There's many sources out there online. I'm sure you're aware of resources in the community and where to go to get a flu vaccination. So definitely do that. As far as general measures you can take to keep your immune system strong, eat well, sleep well. Taking multivitamins every day is safe. Taking a properly recommended dose of vitamin C, vitamin D, that's appropriate, and there's no harm in that. If you have specific health conditions or a specific concern or more detailed questions, I would definitely recommend and strongly encourage you to check with your own established primary care physician to get feedback on what may be an optimal dose of any kind of immune modulating or immune boosting medications or over-the-counter meds that could be helpful to you.
And then zinc. I don't know if you want to speak to zinc, but that was also asked here coming on zinc. Is that something good to take during this time as well?
Yeah, there's some studies out there that show that taking zinc can be very effective in this as well. Again, it depends on what you read and who you talk to. But yeah, there is some very real data and research out there that shows that there is a benefit.
Great. And so then what about, are there any peer-reviewed clinical studies backing the decisions of the restrictions? I'm not sure if that's for you or for me, but it seems pretty common sense more than peer clinical studies to show, hey, if you stay away, you don't get close enough than 6 feet, and you wash your hands, that certainly should help.
It absolutely does. That is the number one most important thing that we in the community can do to control the spread of this virus and finally get over this. It is the most important thing. Vaccination is just one piece, but the more that you can do to distance and prevent the spread now, the more we can get a handle on this. Again, a big piece of this is understanding and controlling the percentage of people among you and around you that are infected. The number of people that are actively infected at the same time really does matter how quickly this thing can spread, and it can inundate your healthcare system. So it absolutely is proven. It absolutely is the most important thing that I and you, all of us, can do to try to control the spread of this virus.
So I think this is for me. Are you guys going to donate your salaries to the people that you put out of work? And again, the goal is to take action now so the economy, our local economy, does not have to shut down. As a former business person all my life, I understand it, I get it. But again, I don't know if people need blame, but every goal that we're doing here is so we don't put our head in the sand, ignore this, and watch it shut down like it did in April, and try to keep the economy going. That's why we're working with businesses every day to say, what do you need? How can we help? And working together. And so, those are interesting questions. Doc, I think one right here. A lot want to talk about the additional things, sugar intake, honey, things that can help internally. But as I go through, sorry, because they are coming in fast and furious here, question. So do you think opening up to stage 5 caused a rise in COVID cases? And if so, are the current restrictions sufficient enough to slow down the spread of such high numbers? And I'll answer that again, Doc. I think going back to normal probably did cause a rise in this as well. From my perspective, the cold weather and the restrictions are only as good as the people that follow them and enforce them. So I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of folks getting in closer proximity to each other that's allowing the virus to spread easily from person to person. So the cold weather definitely did do it. Bringing folks indoors really did do that. And obviously, when you think about opening up to a level 5 or stage 5, that did allow for folks to congregate in larger groups, and that did allow the virus to spread easier. So yes, it does go hand in hand.
So also from Carly Dunn, the coronavirus aid. This would be more for Courtney Parthune. If anyone was wondering what it was actually created for, actually was created for internally here for local units of government to help with our first responders. And we have been able to use those dollars to be reimbursed for the payroll for police and fire, not for police cars. So I don't think we've put in anything to pay for police cars. And again, we're working with businesses every day to see how we can help. Our business being fined for not enforcing mask mandates. They are capable of being fined. That's not what we want to do, and that doesn't actually solve the problem. You could fine every day, and people are still going to let people in and out. What we're focused on is a partner, not as a blame, and continue to show that, hey, their business could be affected if we go to a complete shutdown. Schools are a super spreader, and parents don't always tell the school until a week later. So again, I think that brings about communication. If you're a parent, if you have a family member, doc, I think it's important to get the word out. And if you're feeling ill, don't come into work.
Yeah, absolutely. The more we know about who's infected and who you may have come in contact with, that is obviously very important. So yeah, if you're around someone at work, around someone from school, and you were what's called a high risk exposure, meaning you were, what the CDC says is you're within 6 feet of somebody that was found to be or determined to be positive, within 6 feet, greater than 15 minutes or greater, not wearing masks. That's a high risk exposure. It's important to know about those things so that others can be made aware of that, monitor for symptoms, and separate out from others and try to, again, reduce the spread of this. And remember, the whole point of this that we're doing here, I'm providing medical advice, medical feedback, the science behind this, food for thought, so that all those out there can take it, process it, take it or leave it. It's meant to be a guide and a reference for you, just information. I think information and knowledge is power. You can do more with it. You can make better decisions for yourself and for those around you. So again, I want to make it clear, I'm not here to mandate anything. I'm not trying to push for mandates and push a certain agenda. I'm here to provide information. And it's meant to be a helpful kind of a process or aid to those that are out there that care. So just want to make that clear.
So one question, there's a lot of COVID fatigue. People are tired. There doesn't seem to be light at the end of the tunnel. But I think some of the vaccine information that has come out, even though it might be second quarter of 2021, Doc, can you speak to vaccines and say there might be light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, there is. The research and the news that we're getting so far is very promising. Yeah, both Pfizer and Moderna looks like 90% effective. Moderna's research on their vaccination showing that it's upwards of 95% effective. They're working feverishly with the Operation Warp Speed, which is the federal program put together to try to push these vaccinations out and get them going. Of course, there's a lot remains to be seen about, in the real world once we start to populate the masses of these populations around us and develop what we call a herd immunity. Is it working? Once you receive the vaccination, how long does that confer an immunity? Is it lifetime? Is it a shorter period of time, or maybe a booster is necessary? More testing and research is going to be done on that. We need to buy ourselves time to see how the population as a whole reacts and responds to these vaccinations to try to keep the virus from actually causing active infection.
So a question is, in general, what is the difference between a sinus issue coming into the cold weather and COVID? When should you go get tested? When do you know the difference to ask for a test?
The broadest, most accurate response to that is if you're thinking it, go get tested. COVID can present itself so many different ways. There's a classic presentation, but then there's that with the constellation of symptoms, and then there's the patients, those folks that are completely asymptomatic. You might, it's very common, is, especially in adults, is fever, it's the cough, and it's loss of taste and smell. We see that as the most prevalent, most consistent report of the symptoms. When you look at all those that you question that are positive, and you run their list of symptoms, and you gather all that up and look at it, yeah, most commonly it's fever, it's cough, loss of taste or smell. Many other symptoms go along with that, though, or can be your only symptom. Things like body aches and pains, we call myalgias. It comes and goes, and lo and behold, you had COVID. It can be sinus pressure, sinus congestion, nasal congestion, and pain. A lot of folks will report an intense, just like a really bad runny nose or a bad cold kind of feeling in the nasal passages and in the sinuses. That could be your version. So I would strongly recommend, if you're feeling anything like that, any of those symptoms, go ahead and go get tested. There's several different ways of doing it now. You can go through the hospital system. There's a number you can call. Then there's the testing through the Civic Center. I don't know if it'd be helpful to share those numbers again, Mayor.
Please do, and I'll give the free COVID testing at the Civic, which is 888-634-1116. And right now, with the overload of testing, I don't believe there are any walk-ins. That's the state program. And then doctor at the hospital?
Sure, it's 833-576-3627. When you call into this number, they're going to ask you a series of questions about symptoms and things like that. We expose anybody at high risk or anyone that was known to be positive. They'll run you through that, and then they'll set you up with an appointment to get in and get tested.
Doctor, are there different strains of this virus like there is of the flu?
Generally, no. It's one strain. But when you think of, we look to across the world and try to identify areas in regions where the virus seemed to really take hold more so than in other areas. And then you try to, there's epidemiologists out there that are trying to figure this stuff out and trying to draw a relationship to, is it just something about the demographics of that region in the world, or about the genetics of the folks that live in different areas and their ability to protect against this virus or not? Or is it a certain change or strain in the virus that's different, that causes what does appear to be areas where those that are infected in a particular region are developing more severe infection compared to others? But formally, no. When you look at the genetic makeup of this thing, in general, the appropriate answer I should give is that this is one strain, one virus at this time.
Again, where can you get a drive-by? That is through the test at LaPorte Hospital. Doc, if you don't mind giving that number one more time.
Sure thing. 833-576-3627.
And that's a one-day result, within 24 hours, I think, roughly right now.
Typically, their turnaround time is about 24 hours. Again, I'll tell you that the numbers are growing. The testing is getting a high rate of testing daily now. It could be a day or two before you get a call. But typically, yeah, the turnaround time is, I should say, 1 to 2 days.
But I promise you, you will know you were tested. Having been there on 2 different occasions, all I can tell you is you will definitely know that you've been tested. There also, not that this matters, but what is different between the COVID virus and N1H1? Why was N1H1 not shutting us down like COVID is? I don't know if that is something you'd like to respond to. Don't worry if you don't, but a question that's come up a few times.
So yeah, N1H1 is a particular strain of the influenza virus. So at this point, there's not sub-identifications of sub-strains of COVID virus. It's just COVID, right? And H1N1 was a very virulent strain of influenza virus, and its ability to create severe infection in the folks that it can infect. So I think we're still on. I'll keep speaking to that.
Yes.
I would say that the coronavirus has a much higher mortality rate associated with it than even H1N1. H1N1 was easy to catch, and it caused severe infection in more of the population than in some other less virulent strains. but this is COVID is absolutely eclipsing the worst of the worst that H1N1 or other more virulent strains of the flu were able to produce. This is a whole COVID's in a league of its own.
So I've got another one here from Tom Carter. It says, freedom is supposed to be guaranteed in this country, and low-level, unimportant people like me do not have the right to take away your First Amendment rights. Again, you learn a lot about people during tough times. I don't know how to answer that other than it has nothing to do with First Amendment rights. We're just trying to keep people healthy and safe in our community and keep it going. I'm trying to think other questions here. Is it safe to go get tests, not COVID, at the hospital if you have underlying disease?
It is. That's a very good question. The need to get tested is very important, and therefore the hospital understands its duty to protect you while you come in for that test and several other reasons to come in for evaluation also. You're right. All the PPE is there, and the staff are using the proper PPE. Everything's being done to distance you from a precaution standpoint and PPE standpoint. So it is safe to go. You should go and get tested where you need to. The other piece to it, I mentioned earlier about essential travel. Doing things like keeping yourself healthy, that includes essential travel. So if you feel you need to get tested, if you're gonna pick and choose how often you're gonna go out and where you're gonna go, when you consider the environment you're entering into at the hospital with all of its precautions and PPE utilization and such, you are heading into a safe area to get the care you need or get testing done that you need. That also flows into maintaining a strong or close relationship with your physician, your primary care provider, to make sure that your chronic medical conditions are being checked up on and that they're remaining stable. You definitely don't want to be trying to protect yourself from harm and from catching COVID by staying home and hunkering down, but not going out to see your physician to handle and manage and maintain, stabilize those other medical conditions you may have.
So as you talk about that, social distancing, gatherings, Thanksgiving is coming up, Christmas is around the corner, and I know you don't want to be the one to say it, but we have to be very cautious, especially around elderly relatives and friends, but having large gatherings because of how quick this can spread. And I'm saying that, Doc, but that's probably a concern as your overwhelmed staff is already dealing with now. Thanksgiving and Christmas are probably a concern medically of how to deal with everybody if they don't do what's right, dealing with all the potential patients.
Yeah, it's a big bummer to think about Thanksgiving coming up and Christmas coming up, and what are we supposed to do and with all this COVID thing, and how do we protect ourselves and our loved ones? It's true. In my family, we've canceled Thanksgiving other than just my immediate family. We're getting together and just doing it that way. It's sad, no doubt. Not happy about it at all. But again, go back to the basics. This is a very simple concept, yet incredibly important, incredibly strong. If you get near someone that has it within 6 feet without wearing a mask, very likely you're going to catch it. And they're going to bring it back to your community if you want to travel, let's say, to visit with some family for Thanksgiving. You could be bringing it to them where they can spread it through their community, or vice versa. They brought something to you, or you brought it back into your community, into your family, to your own loved ones. So again, the closer you are with folks that have it, the more likely it is you're going to catch it. So if you increase your numbers of groups of gathering, you're increasing your odds you're going to spread it, you're going to catch it. Simple concept, but incredibly strong.
So my husband and I both have it. How long will symptoms last? I'm sure that is based on the individual's personal health. But Doc, you mentioned it once. So at the last AMA, you went through this firsthand, and you're somebody we consider young, somebody that is in good health, in shape, and it knocked you on your butt, I think is a fair way to put it, pretty hard. But just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, right. So there's different ways of trying to label the virus and your personal infection as mild or moderate, severe, critical. CDC has definitions based on CDC criteria. I had a severe version of it. That's where you're having difficulty breathing, your pulse ox drops, things like that. Gets into the lungs. I did have it severe, and it's nothing I would wish on anyone. I'll be honest to say that it was the worst thing that medically I've gone through my entire life. And I was personally very surprised that I had such a severe reaction to it. I had no immune compromise. Take care of myself. Just surprising that it got as severe as it did. So nobody is safe from this. Thank God, it's very in the far majority of the pediatric population. It's a very mild form of illness, but that's a in the pediatric population. That's a good vector, meaning a good way of spreading the virus. Children don't really get that sick or sick at all. Unknowingly, then will travel, go back home and carry and pass it along to an adult who can take it to wherever they go. So yeah, the virus can be the infection can be very severe. Bets are off on whether or not you think you may have a mild version or not.
Well, and again, my son, who's a senior in college, had to come home. He had it, and he had a headache. He had to, and he's still tired though. The most of his was a headache, but it was 3 weeks ago now, and he's still tired. And so I hear a lot about the lingering, I'm tired, whether you're 20 or whether you're 50, but that seems to be an ongoing issue for people from COVID.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of association with as far as long term effects of this goes with the fatigue. I still experience it. I have some degree of fatigue still, and this is over a month and a half ago that I got over it. So you can have no symptoms. You could have mild symptoms that last for a day or 3 days. It could be 10 days, 14 days before you finally get over that hump where you're physically you're sick and now you're finally getting over it. But there's this lingering fatigue component that is very real, and it really slows you down. It limits what you can do and how active you can be and how productive you can be. So these are very real things to consider when you're deciding or not to take the proper precautions, do the right things, protect yourself, protect your loved ones. How could it look for you when you get it? Could it take you out of commission? Could it create some long-term harm and adverse medical conditions within you? It absolutely can. There's association with what's called a hypercoagulable state, meaning you're higher risk for developing blood clots, like what's called a DVT, a blood clot in the leg that can travel and lodge into the lung. That's called a pulmonary embolism. You can have clots that form in the coronary arteries, causing heart attack. You could have clots that form in the vessels in the brain, causing stroke. So there is a lot of other sequelae that can occur after having had the classic body aches, fever, cough, chills, fatigue, get over it piece, but there's underlying other effects to this, which includes this hypercoagulable state, something that is very important, something to watch for. In the heart, there's other conditions. It's not heart attack alone. You could have an inflammation on the lining of the heart, an inflammation of the muscle itself called myocarditis that can decrease the functionality and performance of your heart and its ability to pump blood throughout your body and go into congestive heart failure, things like that.
So another question is, what do we do about business who aren't enforcing masks or places where our loved ones worked? And I'll take care of that. The county health department hotline is 219-362-2525. How likely is it to catch it from the grocery store? And again, I guess that's like any indoor facility. Doc, I'm sure you can't put percentages on it, but if people aren't wearing masks, if they are coming close and within social distancing, there's probably a good shot indoors that you still could catch it from someone that may have it.
Sure, the store's only going to be able to do a good enough job to keep everything clean and disinfected to the point where, every customer's coming in. If you have someone that has, Mayor, I think you got to get tested.
No kidding, jeez.
So yeah, everything that you can personally do when you're heading into the store, to wear your mask, wash your hands ahead of time. You got disinfectant there in the store as well, wiping your cart down, grabbing only those items you're going to put in your cart and take home and purchase and bring home with you. Try to keep your hands off other things you may not need to touch. That's important because, again, you're transmitting the virus in your touch also if you are carrying. Same thing when you go in, maybe someone came before you and picked something up. They had it on their hands. They got it on the product you just picked up and took home with you. So still be vigilant that way too, to wipe down or wash off the food that you're bringing home before you put it in your fridge and ingest it.
Well, I think you're the most popular person right now in LaPorte County because it's absolutely great attendance. How are you doing time-wise?
We're doing okay.
All right, Doctor, you had said people are catching it from the droplet form. Is the reason I ask you, how does the virus test tell you if the host caught it from a droplet, or through the air. I'm not sure if it matters.
Right, it can't. It won't be able to identify you do the mechanism with which you caught the infection. So the virus is there. You get it into your system one way or the other. You could have caught it much more rarely an airborne way. You're 25 foot away from somebody and someone sneezed or coughed significantly, and some very tiny submicroscopic pieces of the virus are suspended, and that continued to move along, and you breathed it into your nose. If it got into your bloodstream and we got into cells within your body, that's what it starts to do. Then it starts to replicate. If it gets into you, whether it's by airborne or by droplets or by contact, I picked up something dirty at the grocery store and an apple, and I took it home and I just ate it. And I didn't wash it. I just ingested it. That's contact spread. Regardless of how you get it into your system, if it can begin to get into your cells, that's where it starts to replicate. It steals the cell's machinery to replicate itself, and then millions fold, and then it starts to surge throughout your body. It's flowing through your bloodstream. It gets into your lungs, so that when you cough and breathe, there it goes, and you speak, it starts to get expressed that way. So that's where the far majority of the high concentration of the virus comes from, and how it gets spread. So when you get tested, it's actually testing for the presence of it in your own system. It's in the cells within your body, and you collect a swab. Nasopharyngeal is the most effective way outside of doing deeper bronchial washings, which is really for admitted patients that are severely ill. But when you test, you're just testing for the presence of either the DNA or other proteins, depending on the version of the test that you're getting, if you have that virus or not. So it's either there or it's not there when you get tested.
Some pastors have chimed in talking about how they tried to do all the necessary things, social distancing, deep cleaning, sanitizing, and so forth. Is it time to go to virtual services? And I'll answer that and say absolutely. I think it is. I mean, we're putting people in danger when you have larger groups, and I know churches are always exempt at the state level, at the local level. I think politicians don't want to ever touch and have a fight with churches, but I do believe it'd be necessary to go to virtual to, again, play its part in helping reduce or flatten the curve. Let's see. A lot of it comes back to enforcement. And again, call that number 362-2525. And again, I think it's important. Share, because code enforcement is working every day to make sure that people are safe when they go in. And again, you mentioned, but there are deliveries. I think grocer has a delivery option, Instacart option type business, and take advantage of that if you can, so you don't have to go in the store. One thing, Doctor, I'd like to say is thank you to yourself, all the professionals, the nursing staff, the doctors, administration that are working long hours due to this COVID situation to keep us as healthy as possible. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Absolutely. It's more than worth it.
So, do we have a mouth swab in LaPorte? I don't think we do. I'm not sure if a mouth swab would be beneficial to this type of COVID test. It's a nasal one. Doc,
well, if you're getting a swab from inside the mouth, the virus is less concentrated in that area than it is in the far back area of the nasal passage, what we call the nasopharyngeal and nasopharynx area back there. There's a high concentration of it in the nasopharyngeal area, so that is a better place to go and get collect the sample. That's why you see it being done that way. It's much more comfortable to get a saliva collection or a oral swab done, but the likelihood of you actually getting an accurate sample to determine do you really have the virus or not, it's much less sensitive to pick up the virus because there's much less of the virus in concentration in those areas, lower concentration in the mouth.
So what about, hey, I see that ventilators aren't being used as much anymore. Why don't I just treat this like a normal flu? Will the high percentage of people aren't going to die from it? Those that are dying from it have other issues anyway. You know, I don't believe personally we should allow one person to die from this, and we need to all do everything. But what about those people that are saying this is just a tough flu? The majority of people are going to be okay. Why should we be putting this much effort in to do these items?
Yeah, so to cut to the chase, the short answer to this is look at our numbers. Our ICUs are jammed with COVID patients, and people are dying in massive numbers compared to what you're seeing with the annual flu or even a severe form of the flu virus. So the numbers of hospitalizations, the numbers of severely sick people are extremely high, and they do end up on ventilators. And so these numbers, keep that in perspective. I talked about the numbers of vents in use and the number of admissions to the ICUs. That is relative to our advances in medicine since this thing began in March and April, and we're seeing the numbers rise. We know more about this virus. We know more about what medical care is beneficial. We learn to back off on vents. You try to do everything we can to keep a patient off a ventilator where and when possible. So you're not seeing, you know, if this was mainstream medicine, the number of people coming in severely hypoxic with low oxygen saturations and severe distress, you intubate them to save a life, take over and start breathing for them. That in the mainstream is always the appropriate thing to do, but we're learning now with COVID is help that patient fight to try to stay off that ventilator, because we found that if you can do everything you possibly can to prevent the vent from being put into place, that patient has more of a survivability chance or a chance of surviving. So we're putting less people on ventilators, yet we still have so many on ventilators because we're still subsetting these out, right? So despite these advances in medicine and that being applied, we're still seeing these large numbers of people having to be admitted to the intensive care units and lower levels too. It's not just about changes in how we ventilate patients, it's changes in or additions in certain medications, starting Decadron as a steroid, remdesivir, the antiviral IV medication. These are doing incredible things to reduce the severity of illness in so many patients that we're seeing. And so all of this is being done. Everything is being applied that you're hearing about that works. And so with all of that thrown at all of our population here, folks that are getting sick, we still have these numbers that I rolled up to. I'm speaking to the ones that are the worst case scenarios. We're talking about those admitted to the ICU still. So even with all these factors put into place and mitigation pieces put into place, we're still getting these really high numbers. So again, we're doing everything we can. Now we're getting to the point of being super saturated with these patients, and again, people are dying from it. Even with the most advanced and most appropriate medical care, some folks, no matter what they have a severe form, they have a critical form, and no matter what you do, they die.
Doc, this has been fantastic. And again, the key thing is we are a special community. I think you've seen firsthand in the city of LaPorte. We do look out and care for one another. And I know you'll have some people who love to take advantage of social media and be negative. But overall, this community looks out for one another, and we will overcome this. We will beat this. We will win. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. Despite everything that's happening now, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccine's out there. By Q2 2021, we will beat this. And back to you, kind of to summarize, the best thing that we can do are things all within our control of wearing the mask, washing our hands, sanitizing everywhere we are, physically distance, and stay out of those larger group settings where you can pass one another. With college kids coming home, we have to make sure our young ones are doing their part. But these are things that we can all control, and they will flatten the curve. So with that, Doc, any last thoughts?
So you just said it all. I agree with everything you just said. We do have to start talking about this curve again. And again, think about the curve. It's the number of cases that you're getting day by day. And right now we're going up. This thing is not flattening yet. We could say that it's going to start heading down, and we're just going straight up. And we continue to go straight up. We're going to inundate our resources that are there to save lives. So this is all about lives. So I got to say again, Mayor, I commend you for doing this. I thank you for the opportunity to come here and just be able to provide any information that I can. Again, this is a forum to discuss this, to let the community know this is what we're doing at the hospital. This is what the numbers look like. This is what some of the science and some of the medicine is behind it. It's just one forum, and it's a great way of sharing information. This is not meant to be formal medical advice. This is not meant to be that anything that I'm saying here trumps what your physician says or what you read in a credible resource. So I strongly encourage everybody out there, if you have questions or you have doubt, I understand that and I respect that. Go elsewhere to get more information. Go on cdc.gov. Go to in.gov. Go to reputable resources to get your questions answered. There's all kinds of great information out there on those two sites. Call your own physician. So many folks have got chronic medical conditions that are very specific to just you, and your physician has that all dialed in on how to best care for you. Some of what I'm saying today may not apply to you, or it may not be as specific as you need to hear. So this is not intended to replace or be any form of formal medical recommendation. This is just information that I'm sharing. So I strongly encourage you, if you got more questions specifically to yourself and to others around you, call your own physician, get with them, rely on them, those that you trust, reputable resources. I think that's a very important thing to bring up here. This is a great job you're doing here in one forum to really spread the word and have these discussions. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Doc. And if you're free, we might take you up one more time before Thanksgiving next week, not to put you on the spot. But I know you're busy, but if the chance, I think during this time, it's great to give everyone an update.
It's all right. You can put me on the spot. I'll be here. I'll be happy to. Thank you.
Doc, you are the man of the hour. Thank you. On behalf of everybody, I hope they recognize with your time constraints how important Dr. Leonard LaPorte Hospital it is. I'm sorry, Northwest Health of LaPorte.
Whatever.
Northwest Health of LaPorte.
That's right. Important to know that, we're the new name, so you know where to go to navigate it all. But again, nothing's more important than this community. As a physician, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm just trying to get the word out, trying to provide more information. If at all that's helpful, then I'll continue to do it. So again, thank you for the invite.
363-7293 is my cell, or follow Tom Dermody or City of LaPorte Facebook page for the latest. And everybody have a great week, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next week before Thanksgiving when we get Dr. Leonard back. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.